Hello and welcome to the Monster Mechanics Podcast, where we take creatures of myth and media and see how they can be improved. I am your host, Scott Paladin, and with me as always is the bangers to my mash, Zach Jaquays. What are we talking about today, Zach?
This week we're talking about zombies.
So, zombies. We're going to start this with a little bit of a preface because we are two white dudes who need to say these things. There is a real legend of the zombie of Haitian origin about the ability to use sorcery to control people, to kill them and bring them back. That is a real belief. We're going to stay as respectful as we can by steering as clear as possible from the original myth. We're dealing with what has already been trampled into the ground by people before us, the sort of Western concept of a zombie, the appropriated, monetized version.
Yes.
Zombies are the in our popular culture, the popular culture of the West, the zombie is the mindless, undead, raised from the dead creature who shambles about. The modern zombie really comes out of the Night of the Living Dead, monster movie idea of just these like shambling creatures, and then from that there is anything that you have, like we spent several minutes trying to figure out something that nobody else had done very obviously in the zombie space, right? Like they have just been completely reinvented and done to death over and over again.
You got necromancy, you got demonic possession, you got disease, you got fungal infection.
Whether zombies are slow or fast, or if they are actually dead, or if they're just crazy, like every version of or permutation of a zombie seems to have happened at some point, I will, as much as I don't actually much care for The Last of Us, not that I don't care for it, I was not able to finish that game for gameplay reasons. I liked the story. I love their cordyceps fungal zombies. Super cool. Very cool.
It's a great take on that kind of idea. Another interesting thing is like zombies are so often just the allegorical backdrop for humans are the real monsters.
Yes. For some versions of like all monsters are allegories, especially in movies. Sometimes it's consumerism, sometimes it's communism, sometimes it's who knows what else. Modern American bland culture, stuff like that. And sometimes they're also like video games love to use zombies as just like fodder. Like they're never really even they're very rarely even explained or a big part of the universe. They're just something that happens that you can shoot.
I think it's because at their core, zombies are a very easily understood concept. It's something that has died, but is still around and malevolent. Yeah. And what more do you need?
And they're human, so they are easy to model and easy for us to understand. And honestly, you can reskin a main character and then have a zombie out of it. Like real easy to produce. And by being worse than us in a lot of ways, they're not fast, they're not really strong, they're not smart. It's pretty easy to program them. Like I get why they're used in the way they are, but like that's not interesting to us.
No.
I think we need to talk a little bit about the problems of like zombies as just like raised corpses. I've seen a lot of zombie apocalypse fiction, and like, frankly, I don't think they're nearly as bad a problem as everybody thinks they are. Like the initial outbreak when like all of the dead rise, and then anybody who's killed also becomes a zombie. That's bad. But like, if they're actually corpses and continue to rot, they don't last very long. Like, especially if they're using like their human muscles for motivation, like they actually have to like have a muscle attached to a bone. Like that rots, and like worms eat it. And like, I think that there would be so many flies and maggots, like carrion beetles and stuff like that. Like one hot summer, and then like almost all of the zombies are gone. Right.
Yeah. That's definitely one of those things like, how is this still a thing?
Now that actually to me draws out something that I've thought about in the past, which was a really interesting story is to tell the like 30 years down the road story of the zombie apocalypse, where like the dead do rise, but like, so you have to take care about it. And like the world has been sort of destroyed, but people are still going on with it. And like the survivors now have, I love the idea of rituals about like when somebody dies, you have to like put them to rest correctly. Otherwise they come back. And like how that affects society and how people think about those things. I think that would be a really interesting story. I'm not sure that's what we're doing today, but
Yeah, I think so much of that already sort of exists in the idea of like burning the bodies, and like a lot of it kind of reflects like when you're dealing with a plague or whatnot. But yeah, there's definitely some interesting ideas if to explore with preventing zombie apocalypses or
Yeah.
living within a post zombie apocalypse society. That's one thing about like humans is like we are extremely adaptable. If this pandemic has shown us anything, like anything can become the new normal.
yeah, that's true. Absolutely. And I also love the idea that, so if we're talking about zombies, we're going to have to come down to the idea of like, what is the motivation for a zombie? Like, what is, when I say motivation, like what is the, are we talking sci-fi? Are we talking magic and fantasy? Are we talking, like, or some mixture of the two? I don't think the virus idea is super interesting to me.
Not
like,
especially, no.
Yeah, like especially something like the rage virus of the 28 days later world, where like these are still humans, they're diseased and they're but like to me, that if I wrote that as an author, my next step would be like, oh well, then we're doing like an hour and a half medical drama about finding the cure, right? Like that's the whole point. Like it's of us, we're in a bunker with some scientists trying to like, virologists. Like we can't. It's not a shoot 'em up, let's kill everybody. It's like no, we have to like. We're now trying to preserve these are living human beings, So if we're going to discount that, there is, if it's actual dead people, I don't know if there's a really good scientific route we can take to motivate, to like give them motion and make them move and act like people if they're actually dead. So I think that to me screams that we're talking somewhere in the realm of magic, right?
Okay. Yeah, magic, or the corpse is no longer the motivator, or the person was no longer the motivator, and there's some outside force.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely do like the idea that it's the body is just a puppet of some other creature or entity, that like when somebody dies and this thing takes over and like raises them and has them move around and do stuff, like it's not like it's some remnant of the person that was there before, that like this thing is just a tool to be used or to be manifested by some other power.
Well, that's kind of why the cordyceps take on it was so good, because like the whole concept of a biological organism that's just trying to fulfill its ecological niche, so to speak, by using these corpses is kind of a cool idea.
Yeah. So we could do something in the realm of a magical version of that instead, where it's about, it's some malevolent god or something like that, or a demon. You mentioned when we were talking about this episode, you'd said maybe we should do shadow people instead. And I think that's a chocolate and our peanut butter kind of situation, where like, let's just pull like the idea, because the idea of shadows and the absence of light being like strongly thematically associated with zombies, I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think there's also some really cool mechanical aspects to explore with that. Like, what if there are like, so there's so often like the light is this sort of cleansing force, whether it's metaphorical or literal. I think there's some interesting ideas with that, especially because even in shadow, like there's always some light there. So sort of the threshold becomes interesting.
Yeah, you need a light in order to create shadow. Like a complete absence of light entirely doesn't create, like nothing in there is shadow, it's darkness. It's kind of a weird definitional distinction, which I like. So I'm going to lay down our proposal for like the setting that we're in, like, because this isn't, we're dealing with a magical monster, but I don't think we're in a magical world, which is to say like, we're still in like the modern day. Like this is if we're writing a movie, this starts in, 2021. We are, or maybe a little before, so we don't quite have such the end times. But it's a 2000s movie, so there's guns and movies and cars and things like that, and there aren't like wizards, right? That makes sense. Okay, but that we're talking about a creature that is malevolent and magical in a world like our own. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, I've got some ideas on that, but if you have anything you want to kick us off with, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking, I really like the idea that these things can only move in darkness. That like if you shine a bright light on a dead body, that whatever is the energy within it, the creature or whatever, is forced out. And so instead of having the fight, the traditional zombie fight where everybody's trying to go for headshots and you're like banging them in the head with shovels and stuff, it's about like flashlights and spotlights and things like that, where like setting off large amounts of light in order to like fight these things without having to actually like do it with violence. It's kind of a different sort of theme, which I was really I'm into.
So one of the ideas, which is similar but a little kind of a different take on that I had, was so what if the source of this corruption isn't so much the shadow but the light source itself, and when you're shining like this corrupted light source or whatever on things, you're projecting some sort of twisted alternate version of the thing you're shining the light on into whatever's behind it. So you're now like, when you have the shadow cast from this this demonic light source or whatever, and it's, you know, shines on, I don't know, a person or whatever's in the shadow behind them is sort of infected by this corrupted.
I am absolutely all over the idea of a corrupted life source. I have, if this was a story, I'm gonna pitch you the opening to a movie.
Yeah, hit me.
Which is, it starts with the day the new moon showed up, and it's a second moon in the sky, and it has its own light that corrupts and causes things to turn into zombies.
Okay, I got chills from that. So please continue.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the pitch. Like, that's the whole idea, is like the source of this power is this new thing in the sky, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I like the idea that it's like, sometimes you'll see the moon during the day, depending on the cycles and things like that. And so this thing's bright enough to be seen, you know, during the day, but also depending on how the orbital cycles and things like that work out, sometimes it'll be more active at night, sometimes more active during the day. And that when things are within its light, but not over, maybe not like, maybe it's one of those things where like there's an interaction between its light, which is corrupting, and the light of the sun, which is much more natural and has its own energies behind it. So like, if this thing is risen during the night, all of the light that it casts is super corrupting, causes huge troubles for everybody. But then a couple of weeks later, a different part of the cycle, it is now risen during the day, and it's still corrupting and it's still a problem, but it's being overpowered by the bright light source of the sun. Mm-hmm. And so it has a different sort, like different rules happen at different times of the month, as it were.
Okay.
I think that could be really cool. And I love the idea, like, that's just a banger of an opening image, you know, the second moon in the sky. I mean, you know, the dark malevolent red moon or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or is there like blood moon is already a thing. Is there a better word for it? Shadow moon?
Shadow moon is pretty cool.
Or even like, I love the idea of like of an orbital body that you can see from the Earth, and it's like big enough that you can notice that there's huge chunks of it missing. So it's like the broken moon or something.
Oh yeah.
That could be cool. Or like, it's broken. There's huge cracks on its surface, like even to the point where like chunks of it are sort of separated out, and that's where the light is coming from. It's coming from within this huge rock, and you can see the glowing, those glowing fractures within it.
I love the idea that maybe like part of the moon is fractured, like, and the other part of is whole, and this thing is kind of orbiting or rotating as it orbits, and like every time like that light sweeps across the planet, there's more of this corrupted light sweeping over the planet and infecting the inhabitants.
Yeah, I totally dig that. Okay, so maybe there's an idea behind this. We're calling this light, but maybe it's obviously some sort of magical energy, right? Like it doesn't have to behave entirely like regular light. And so maybe it's a little sticky, which is like when it gets into something, it kind of lingers there. And so even when you are no longer in that light source, there's still some of it sort of remaining within you or within the zombie or something like that. And it will either run out, or then you can expunge it with regular light. So it's kind of like a form of like irradiation, or yeah, where it kind of, you can kind of carry it in. But if you then like, if it's, because I love the idea that, you know, maybe it has a soft purple glow or something like that, kind of an ultraviolet thing going on, and so you can like, like it makes the whole, like if you're looking out your window at night into a landscape covered by this stuff, it makes everything kind of glow in a weird black light sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
And then even when that light passes, or when something that's been affected by it moves into the shadow of this light, you can still see it glowing because because that light is still sort of clinging to it. But then if one of these light zombies, one of these broken moon zombies, comes into your building and you need to stop it, what you do is you can just shine a flashlight at its head, and that pushes off the corrupted light. A regular light washes it away, and then it just stops. It quote unquote kills the zombie, but it doesn't. You don't have. I'm kind of trying to steer away from the idea that this is a big blood fest. So instead you stop them in their place, and remove their ability to move.
Interesting. Yeah. I like the idea that the physics of this broken moon light source are a bit different than normal light. I like the idea that maybe it sticks to different things differently.
It passes through water like electricity. It's conducted through water. So
interesting.
The oceans are always slightly glowing with this energy, because even if this thing is on the other side of the planet, the oceans are all connected. And so this light energy is being pumped into the oceans at huge amounts, to the point where it's being pushed through the whole world. Right.
Uh-huh.
And you can get glowing rain where even when, a cloud that had passed through this thing's light on a normal day, you suddenly have one of these glowing clouds, and drops of rain that look like fluorescent paint or something like that start falling and splashing onto the ground and corrupting things within it.
That's cool. Also, with the addition of a second moon, tides are going to be a huge problem. That's
what got me onto thinking about water, is the idea that you have these additional tidal forces that are causing all kinds of trouble and disrupting jet streams and currents within the ocean and stuff. I love that idea. Oh man, if it's conducted in water, I like the idea that water. Ooh, okay. I got half a thought. Okay, so if this stuff sort of lives in water, not lives, but it can be properly absorbed within water. Maybe one of the things is that the only body that can be infected by it is one that still has fluid in it. So if you desiccate a body, if you dry it out, something like leather, for example, doesn't have a lot of moisture in it. So it won't reanimate a properly dried out corpse, but one that's been more rotted and fetid and is still full of fluid can still be animated by this thing. If water can store this evil light, then it, a wet zombie has a bigger battery charge in it than a dry one would. I like the idea too, as well, that okay, actually this is a question, not an idea.
Okay.
What is it about dead humans or dead animals that is different, that allows them to be infected, that doesn't affect things I don't know, maybe plants, or does it affect plants? Or maybe, and also then, does it have an effect on the living in the same way that it does on the dead? I mean, I'm interested in, we could go a bunch of different angles here. I just want to see how we're going to navigate it. And I'm open. We could do lots of different ways. Because
the cop-out answer is to do something with souls or something.
Yeah.
Which is hand wavy, and perhaps we can come up with something better than that.
Yeah, I think I like the idea that it actually is to do with the human form, the bipedal, specifically it is bipedal with arms and a head, the shape of a man, right? That I'm coming back to the idea of the old Christian idea of God having made man in his image. And so it's got something to do with having been being made into the form, into sort of the shape of a man, is part of what gives something motivation. It makes it susceptible to this light, because this light has been, in my head, specifically crafted for humans. It was made by it's not just some naturally occurring malevolent force. This is a god or a demon that is specifically trying to attack humans, and so therefore has sort of designed it. That's one of the rules, is that it's about the shape.
So maybe there was some celestial war long ago, and this was a weapon designed to be used against the creating force, but because it wasn't just this hurts gods, and that's what it does. It hurts things that are shaped like God. because that was the input that they had to work with, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay, so then in this universe, the humans, which were, created by a god, like we're sort of maybe a lost colony of this war. Like
Mhm.
maybe that this was a project that was being created. Like humans were a project being created by one of the sides of this
Mhm.
war in order to, I don't know. Like there's maybe there's a reason why we were made this way as well. Like it's not just an accident that like this is the way that these things work. It's like maybe we were we were a lifeboat. Like, okay, so we've got the God War that's happening billions of years in the past. This is when the universe is still young, and you've got these like two luminescent races where you've got or species where like you've got the human shaped ones, the ones that would go on to create us, and they're the side of creation or something like that. And then you've got the other more malevolent, more dark race, and they're locked in this struggle for survival with each other to the point where both sides at some point realize it's going to, like, this is going to be mutual destruction. Like they're going to kill each other out. There's no way, or maybe like the nature of the universe is changing such that neither of them will be able to live, like one of the two. And the one side, the one that leads to us goes, okay, in that case, we have to figure out what comes next. We have to make our own children. And so they find Earth and they start to guide the evolution of Earth in the direction to create us. Like we weren't really necessarily guaranteed to be on the path of sentience until this past force starts to muck around in the gene pool 100 million years ago or something like that. Maybe they sent the asteroid that kills the dinosaurs to make room for a different kind of species, and then they're the ones that are sitting there guiding evolution afterwards in order to result in us. And then so we are the after apocalypse, right? Like the apocalypse of the universe already happened, and we are the continuation where they're trying to get this whole thing started up again under a new form, more physical form.
Well, that's cool. I have a slightly different take on kind of how this might have played out. Is what if this broken moon was originally a tool of creation? Okay, like there were big, just like you just had like giant cookie sheets full of gingerbread men that it brought to life.
Yeah, and this is a giant battery to charge them all up.
Yeah, like this basically like this was the mechanism for creating man.
Oh, it's broken. So this is a giant floating factory to make the cookie cutter men. Like it's like you ship in cookie cutter men. They go through this moon, and they were supposed to come out the other side as living people, but it's broken. And
so, while it may not affect living people, it sees these corpses or whatever, and it doesn't have instructions or like the part that handles like this is dead.
Yeah, it was never expected to see. It's bad program.
Yeah, so it's just like, okay, let's make this a man again. Yeah, but because it's broken, it doesn't work quite the same way. So you get this broken, shifted, hungry individual instead of. I like that.
That's fantastic. So we don't have. It's not out of malevolence. It's just because things are malfunctioning after 5 billion years floating out into space, and like nobody expected this to happen this way.
Or maybe this thing was damaged in the God War or whatever. Yeah. And sent off into space, and now has, after 5 billion years, ended up in orbit around a planet with humans.
Yeah, okay, so if this was created in the God War and it was meant to motivate not us necessarily, like it wasn't about creating humans, it was creating the things that came before us. So this is an angel factory, right? Like this is the servants and soldiers of a god that this thing was created. Yeah. Oh, which means you get some cool imagery that could come along with it, where maybe a particularly supercharged zombie starts to develop like luminescent ultraviolet wings as the energy starts to sort of like flow into areas that it was expecting to have.
Okay, that would be badass. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the wings are just the I want to say off-gassing, but the sort of the release of that energy. Like it's one of the areas on the human form where that light would flood out if there's too much of it. So if you overload a human form with it, then it sort of like creates these two aurora style plumes of light that come out. Then it's really just more of that being expressed outward. And then you could see that same light move, like it's still looking for a place to go. So it it like comes out and it spreads out like wings, and then it comes down to other corpses and animates them. So you have like one superpower zombie or one superpower corpse that is powering a whole group because it has just so much of this energy built up inside of it.
So is the motivating force for these things now to like sort of carry out their orders as like these soldiers in this kind of god war?
I think they're malfunctioning, droid soldiers. Like they were built to be angels in this god war. The war is long over. And so it's creating these things, and that's the basic instruction set that it's giving them is like go and fight and kill. It's not even about eating brains or anything like that. It's not about hunger. It's just you are built to wage war, so you're gonna go attack other creatures.
Yeah, I like that.
That's really cool. That creates a system that explains a lot about the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah,
and it gives you the opportunity for, depending on exactly how the corpse is set up, how much light energy it has inside of it, you could have more than just the dumb zombie, the dumb broken zombie. You can have you could have ones that develop intelligence, learn enough to strategize, maybe even at some point you figure like enough to communicate with them and figure out what's going on. That makes the arc of the disaster entirely different, where maybe this is something that instead of trying to expunge it entirely, we're just trying to fix the system enough that we can utilize it or just set it right.
Yeah, and that kind of opens up like the stories of like ambition that goes too far. Like, really, you got one who's like, well, we should blow up the moon.
Yeah,
and you got
that's just going to release all of the energy at once.
And you got others who are like, well, we can harness it.
So, is there any other realm? So yeah, this answers some of the other questions. Like it doesn't create, or what's the word? It doesn't affect dogs. It doesn't affect plants, things like that. I think it's not human, but it might affect dead monkeys or apes, which is a whole like a separate thing. But also like if you soak a mannequin in water, like it could be affected as well because it's looking for the shape of a man, right?
Yeah, like that also explains why like things aren't like statues aren't necessarily
because marble's dry.
Yeah,
that's cool.
But if you were to make it porous somehow, or you make your sculpture out of pumice. Get pumice zombies.
Or even just like take a wetsuit and fill it with water, like tie off the ends and like if the light could get in, maybe. Or even like you could do small experiments with like they mold something out of gelatin, like make a little rubber dude, a little gelatin dude. Gelatin's full of water, and like you could see them like rise up and like that's like I love that idea of a scientist experimenting with all these different versions and trying to figure out exactly how human you have to make them,
Yeah. I feel like you could definitely get almost like a Brandon Sanderson style, like learning the rules of the system and then abusing them.
Yeah. It's absolutely begging for somebody to figure that kind of stuff out. If you could totally come up with rules you have to change some of the parameters a little bit from what we've been talking about, but that's totally cool to get where you could have a suit with tubes running through it. If I will try to put a link in the show notes. The cool suits that they use for aviators, where it runs water, and astronauts get this too, where they run water to regulate your temperature. You could have the same thing around yourself, and you're like close. Then it puts the water in a configuration close enough to let you absorb this sun energy, or not sun, this broken moon energy. And then like maybe that gives you superpowers, like you could use it for extra strength or something, or
so it's basically like a Bane suit for harnessing this. Yeah.
But like you'd have a guy with like these glowing lines all over his body filled with this fluorescent stuff. That could be really cool. I do like the idea that even though it doesn't affect humans, it still does that same sticky quality to us, where like if you go out at night in it doesn't necessarily hurt you, or maybe they just don't know if it hurts you or not. But like, people are going to wear masks and things like that. And then when they come into whatever safe zone or whatever, they have the decontamination shower, but it's just like a sauna or a tanning room where like really bright light blasts you from every angle for a second. That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, I do like the idea that maybe there's also like, maybe it's rare, but there are like conditions that this broken moon reads as correct in a human being for like being dead already, or being suitable for being infected. So you've got some people who are still living that are being affected by this light.
Yeah, it would have to be something like, I mean, I want to go away from like the idea that it would be like a damage. It would have to be something about maybe, no, I don't like that. I was going to say maybe it has something to do with like people who look like the originals more than other people. Like it has to do with their form again. But I think that gets a little too problematic.
A little too master race.
A little too master racy stuff, even if it doesn't matter what race you're picking. Maybe it's something about, ooh, there's a command system.
Okay.
Like this thing has the instructions and stuff in it, and it's been programmed. It's a big machine, right? So if you can figure out the words to say, the correct commands, the actual like holy words that came from the gods before, then you can start to instruct this thing. And so certain things, some of that will act like a curse, or some of it will act like a boon to yourself, depending on if you come out. So you like, I'm thinking about like the secret names of gods or something like that, where like these are things that have gotten passed down because we are created and descended from the race that built these, the species that built this. We're their children. So like maybe some of that got passed down in various religions, where like particularly sacred words, secret names, things like that could be actual commands that allow you to control and give you some measure of control over these things, either to command the soldiers, to order zombies around, or to command this broken moon's light itself, where like you can call it into you.
Could also be kind of interesting if like this broken moon served more as like a resurrection or cloning facility for the gods themselves. Like instead of creating soldiers, like it's like in case of god death, break glass to reconstitute God.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe, and there's no reason why I can't do both. Like, under its normal circumstances, it's about creating the soldiers, but it also acts as a giant repository for this god energy, and maybe it's got their personalities stored somewhere. So if you invoke the right words, you can cause one of these things to form an avatar or to inhabit a particular person or something.
So by invoking these words, you can change it from reconstituting Jeff, and now you're reconstituting Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have it switch modes, and then maybe like if we're taking the parameters of this story to their conclusion, I think that like at some point you have to somebody figures out how to like fully manipulate this thing, and you like actually get to conquer death. Like once you've figured out how to like absorb or take in the energy from people to be stored and replicated and duplicated, you can then like when somebody dies, you build them a new form, you fill it with enough water, and then you like push their new energy into it, and you've resurrected them. And like, then humanity moves on to the next level or something like that.
I think that's a really cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that, that seems like a natural conclusion of where to end this.
Yeah. I think there's just plenty of meat on those bones for anyone who wants to take this and run with it.
Yeah, please do. All right. Well, in that case, I guess we're done. Bye.
All right. Until next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Monster Mechanics. If you have a couple of minutes and want to help the show, why don't you head to iTunes or Podchaser and leave us a 5-star rating and review? That really helps us out. Nominally, that would actually help people find the podcast, but in point of fact, we just live on positive reinforcement, and it helps us keep the energy going to keep this show as good as it is. Now for the credits. Monster Mechanics is produced and edited by me, Scott Paladin, and hosted by myself and my best friend, Zach Jaquays. All of the ideas generated during this podcast are My wife is trying desperately to get my dog back into the house. All of the ideas generated during this podcast are released under a do what the f you want public license.